Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of the Outer Realm. We're broadcasting live right here in the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so much. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, Dr. Snick, aka the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time and music for our intro and outro. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found basically anywhere that good music can be found. So thank you, Justin. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis for our incredible banners and our artwork. We appreciate you so very much, and we really appreciate your creativity. Let me tell you that. Now, tonight, we welcome for the very first time Dan Baldwin and George Sewell. I hope I said that right. And they're going to be discussing the Lindsey Higgins. I like to call it more of a contact story as opposed to an abduction story. I'm sure her story has been featured on Haunted on Netflix, and there's just a whole lot more to it, which makes it really that much more fascinating. But in order to partake in the show this evening, please head on over to usual sites, but I do like to go through them just in case we have somebody who's new. So on YouTube, we have The Outer Realm, we have UFO Gods Extraterrestrials, we've got UFO Paranormal Radio. Then we head over to Facebook, Joe Montaldo, UFO Undercover, News on the Flip Side. Of course, UFO Paranormal Radio, United Public Radio, Canada's Most Haunted, and of course, The Outer Realm. So that's how you will be able to interact with our guests and Amelia and I tonight. So welcome, everybody. I can breathe. Oh, good. I know. So we've got, thank you very much for sharing. And thank you, Ken, Janie, Adriana, Tamara. I like it. So Facebook user who shared to the Rift.
Thank you. Can you give us a name?
Howie maybe. Yeah.
Is it Howie?
I know. What's up, Howie? So
he would have been on with his own unless he deactivated. My daughter deactivates her account several times. Hi, April. Several times through the year. And people, Howie. People think that she's unfriended them or blocked them. Like, no, she shuts it down. You'll find her on Instagram. That age group is not on Facebook.
No, this is true.
Yeah, they're on Instagram. They're not really on Facebook.
I know.
So it's you're so mysterious, Howie. You're so mysterious.
I know.
But, yeah, so if you're looking for my daughter, I'm just letting you know. She's on Insta. But
yeah. But I am really looking forward to the show. Hey, Wayne. Really? Oh, I had a problem logging in. Sorry to hear that. Me? Always nice to see you, Howie. Always know. We know where to find you. Go check Howie out on the Rift Network and see a whole other bunch of great shows along the same line. So I'm sending this off right now.
And tomorrow we're having a great Q&A. Hi, Jonathan. I just remembered because he commented.
Table type of thing. Yeah, be really fun.
So bring your questions to the chat room tomorrow night. We're going to be covering a lot.
We are. So tonight I'm just going to send this off this link if you want to just.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got two guests to introduce tonight. We have Dan Baldwin, who is an award-winning author of more than 50 books writer, co-writer, and ghostwriter, certified clinical hypnotherapist, and expert pendulum dowser, in which he used for over 15 years. I believe he's still doing this to find missing persons.
Mhm.
George Sewell has an undergraduate degree in speech and journalism, Master of Arts degree in drama and communications, and he's also an award-winning playwright, retired counselor, and licensed prevention professional. He is also an author of several books, including the novel The Chrismere. So please welcome to the show, Dan Baldwin and George Sewell. I am tongue-tied today.
We're just sort of going at the same pace. Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's Wednesday. It feels like Friday.
Yeah. George is in the green room, so now we're just waiting.
God, and Folgers is the best. Yes, Michael Kennedy.
Yes, we'll put that right up there because they are our sponsor. Folgers is the best.
Yes,
I'm almost going to have to go in and do some stuff. Get our Folgers Q&A stuff back up. Loved you on Halloween. Oh, thank you. True Ghost Stories. Oh, that's where I live. Supernatural Wednesday. I love it. Yes, Halloween night, I was on the Horsefly Chronicles, which is another show here on the network on Monday evenings.
Yeah.
And, I know. So I thought, I'm home. Yes, I can do this. Let's just do it and have a little bit of fun. And it was a lot of fun. So that was good.
I had a hell of a migraine on Monday.
I know. So we're just waiting for Dan to come in. But what we're going to do is bring in George, because George is with us right now.
Yes.
Bam. Yay. Hello.
Hi, George. How are you? Oh, I want to go get my hat now. I want to go get my hat.
Go get your hat, whatever.
I love it.
There we go. Styling. I love it.
I love the hat. The Panama's one of my favorites.
There we go. So we're just waiting on your partner in crime to tune in.
I was just swapping emails with him. I'm surprised he hasn't shown up yet.
Yeah. Well, I sent it to both of you. This way I know if one of you got it, then the other of you would get it as well.
The other you.
The other you, yeah.
It's one of those, oh no.
I was just going to say, it's been one of those days. And I'm just popping the guests right out of the chat room.
Gosh, is it ever?
I know. So really been looking forward to, and our listeners love anything to do with, the paranormal or spirit communication or alien abductions, contact, that sort of thing. I tend to always lean more to contact. I just find the word abduction so intrusive, and in some cases it applies, right? So,
I prefer the to use another word other than abduction. That has such an automatic negative, almost criminal intent to it, and certainly in Lindsey's case, it turned out that that was not the proper word to be used.
Oh, good. Oh, we're glad we got that on there. Yeah, I mean, you have words like contactee and experiencers, and I think it just varies for so many people. Yes. Abductee just carries such a stigma with it,
It really fits with the Fourth Kind film. I'm just saying, like abductee sounds like something from that movie.
Okay.
It does instill fear.
I'll give it to you. Yeah. It does have that stigma when they come, like creeping into your room at night. It's just like, okay, that might be sort of abductee, stalker like behavior.
Might want to call people volunteers if they don't have an issue with it.
Right. Oh, here is Dan. All right.
Oh, can you hear me?
Hi.
Dan.
Look at this. I need my hat. Somebody's got a hat on.
She's going to go run get her hat pretty soon.
I've got my dad's right in the corner on the chair.
Put it on.
Yeah, go get it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We are, if anything,
you won't
fashion
be able
conscious.
to see me at all. I'm all in black here and like all dark.
Well, welcome.
We'll see if we can brighten things up.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Michelle got it. One time I had it on.
Look dashing.
That's very Yellowstone.
There we go.
That was not cool.
It's very Yellowstone that way. I like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
The right way and the wrong way.
Yeah.
So there we go. Very stylish. Love it.
That's the only thing I don't own is a cowboy hat, but I want one made for my head. I want to go in person and have it made. I don't want
Come down to Tombstone. I'll show you where to go.
That's what I need to do. Thank you. I do need that. I
I'll
want
tell
that
people
whole
down
experience.
here, this isn't fashion, it's survival gear.
Yep.
Oh.
It's culture.
Yeah.
It's culture. It's like the fedoras and the Italians.
Yeah.
It's very cultural. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, welcome to the Outer Realm and all of our millions of listeners. Welcome to all of you guys tuning in as well. I was just saying a few minutes ago before we popped in with George that our listeners love this sort of stuff. They love to hear about extraterrestrial experiences, whether we go contact, experience, abduction, they love the paranormal. So to have a situation that sort of has everything balled up into one story is pretty exceptional. So where I'd like to start is pretty much how did you guys start working together? Let's talk about you guys first, and then we can talk about how you came into, taking care of this investigation.
Okay. Well, let me start off with we're in a real time machine here. This goes back to about 1975.
Okay.
George and I did not know each other, but we worked for the same, I don't want to say underground newspaper, but that type of newspaper, alternative newspaper.
Okay.
And we wrote columns and, features and things like that. And the editor, I was looking for something to do. And the editor said, well, one of my writers, George Sewell, is forming this film group called the Scotch and Cinema Society. He says, they watch old movies and drink scotch. I said,
nice.
All right.
All right. Yeah.
Give me his number.
I'm down. Okay.
So, anyway, I called George up, met at his house, a week or so later, whenever had the initial meeting. And we've been, I don't know, we had super glue on the elbow or something. We've been stuck together ever since.
Good. You're just like, yep. Okay. So you have a long history together. So you've done a lot of, obviously, I'm sure this investigation was not your first together because you just worked together. You've co-written this book together. Mm-hmm. And how did Lindsey Higgins' story come to you? Because spirit communication, extraterrestrial, contact, those are two really, like, I know you're going to join it together, but for the most part, people don't realize how connected they really are.
True. And first off, Dan's in Arizona. I'm in Northwest Louisiana. Back when we first met, Dan was living in Shreveport. So we've been continuing to work together, even though physically apart for all these many years.
Wow. Fantastic.
As far as how we got into the situation with Lindsey Higgins, Lindsey Higgins is a woman who lives in Shreveport, Louisiana. And Lindsey has had encounters with what we would call extraterrestrials all her life, as well as other paranormal manifestations and experiences. And this was the kind of thing that she could not discuss with her family or with anybody else. So many people, as you know, who've had encounters or experiences. Who do you talk to? And there really was no one for Lindsey. So she had to sit on this for, some 40 years. Oh. And she finally reached a point where I can't do this anymore. I got to get this out. I mean, the pressure that she was having to use to keep this in, she just reached a point of, I've got to get it out. And then she happened to listen to a podcast that talked about a Los Angeles production company that was looking for people who had lifelong paranormal experiences for a possible series on Netflix.
Right.
And Lindsey said, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. So she kind of wrote up her story, sent it out to the production company. 14 hours later, she gets a call from them to set up a formal interview. They have a formal interview via Skype. And the next day, she's given the word, we're using your story. And as part of that process, they asked her, did she know anybody else in the Shreveport, Bossier City area who had similar experiences or knew about these type things? And that's when she asked a friend of hers who was acquainted with some of her experiences. Did her friend know of anybody or could recommend somebody? And her friend was also someone acquainted with me. And she said, you need to call George Sewell. Here's his number. He knows something about these things.
Right.
And so I got an out of the blue phone call one night from, hello, is this George Sewell? Yes. Oh, this is Lindsey.
Maybe. Oh. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So-and-so said I could call you and we could talk about things. And, what can we talk about? And so for 2 hours, I got to hear Lindsey's story beginning when she was about 2.5 years old up until the present. And what I was able to do was, the reason her friend referred her to me is back in the late 80s and early 1990s, I was the assistant state director in Louisiana for the Mutual UFO Network. And I had an opportunity to visit with a number of folks who had had various encounters. Dan at that time would often accompany me when we would go visit a family and listen to their story. They weren't really looking for anything hard and fast. They wanted somebody just to listen and understand. And so I had many of these encounters that I had heard and Dan had heard. And pretty much everything Lindsey described to me in that telephone call, I could say, Lindsey, I've heard this before from other people, other time, and other locations. And that was a great relief to her.
Right. And I can only imagine.
Subsequently, the production company contacted me. They wanted me to be a part of that episode. And so the first time I met Lindsey was on location in Pasadena, California for the shooting of this episode for Netflix series Haunted, their first season. And it was episode 5. And that kind of piqued some interest there. If you have a chance to see the episode, it does a good job of recreating some of the terror and confusion that young Lindsey felt going into her young adulthood. And they recreate one episode that occurred when she was a sophomore in college, where she was literally pulled out of her room, through a wall and into a craft, and off she goes for a particular, whatever it was that happened. And we covered that particular episode in the book, Paranormal Pendulum 3, in some detail. Now, I'll pass this over to Dan in just a minute, but the way Dan got involved with this was I had been assisting him in his research for his first 2 books on the paranormal pendulum. He would also make some trips to Louisiana, and I would set up some locations where we could go, and using pendulum dowsing, that's the tool, to communicate with whatever spirit may be in this particular building or location. And, buildings have spirits and people sense them. And I wonder who that is. Well, we went to a couple locations and found out who they were. So in that course, Dan was in town for research on the Paranormal Pendulum book 2. And I said, Dan, I got to introduce you to Lindsey Higgins and her husband. You've got to meet these people. So we all met, got along famously, and it was just kind of the best way to find out or research what's going on in Lindsey Higgins' life is to use the pendulum. I don't think the pendulum's ever been used for any kind of research in this arena. And
I don't think I've never heard of it.
And so we spent 2 years primarily using the pendulum to look into what's going on with Lindsey Higgins. The little team kind of came together. It's the way things came together is a story of itself. We had a couple of mediums, if you will, as a part of our team. So we had a lot of depth and different styles, if you will, of information that reaffirmed itself. And it ended up telling quite a story. I'll pass it back to you, Dan, for the pendulum.
This started out initially, and certainly for me was an interesting story. And basically, it was curiosity on my part. And over the years, it more or less developed into something of a mini mission. Some of the real motivation behind Paranormal Pendulum 3 is to tell people out there who are in Lindsey's situation, or were in the situation she found herself in, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who are experiencing what you are going through, and there are a lot of people out there who are willing to not only listen to you, but to converse with you and to help you get through the struggle that you're having. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's help out there, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to step out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think when you're going back, that far back to her being a child and having to suppress that information for 40 years. I mean, I grew up around that same era because, I'm just doing the math. It's just the things you talked about. Those like family secrets. And even then,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back then, you turn yourself into the crazy uncle they lock up in the attic,
Yeah, or put on the porch with a cocktail.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we do in my family.
Not a bad way,
I sit on the porch a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting though that I believe it's tomorrow. A report goes to Congress about the UFO sightings within the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently they investigated only 300, but out of the only 300 they investigated, 150 are unexplained.
As soon as it comes back unexplained, you're onto something.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
If you can't explain it, but that just warrants further research, which is probably as close as you're going to get to it being taken really seriously.
Yeah, well, the point is, though, the U.S. government is finally coming around to admitting what people like you and me and others, and Lindsey, have known for decades.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a slap in the face to people who've had, these experiences, to be told it doesn't exist.
And then, you've been mocked, and in some cases, careers ruined because of the belief in the UFO. Then all of a sudden, the switch is flipped. Hey, it's okay.
Right.
Think about all those poor people since say 1947.
Crazy. Now we'll listen to your story. Now we actually want to hear it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I get really leery when you mix government and military and with certain unusual things that they're very curious about.
Route. Yeah, we're not interested in that route. We didn't go there. We're focusing strictly on people and what they're experiencing.
Yes.
And that's
Well,
back when Dan and I were interviewing the people in Northwest Louisiana who had encounters, at the time I was making a note that for many of them, not all, but many of them, they felt that the event was personal, that it wasn't anything random, but it was specific to them as a person. And I made a note of that. And as a part of the research for this book, Paranormal Pendulum 3, I had an experience, if you will, that absolutely reaffirmed that thinking, that I understand what they were meaning by it was personal.
Okay.
So this book is just chock-a-block full of things that, Dan and I had no idea where it would go. We're going to investigate, and we'll just go where the information takes us.
Right.
And we had to be very disciplined because there was so much information that could have gone in so many directions, and we would still be researching it. But we stayed focused on, we're telling Lindsey's story, and that's what we're going to do. And we got, and that's what this book is. Lindsey's story. It's got a lot of ancillary material to it, but it's directly related to Lindsey's experience.
Right. Which I think is great. So where do you want to start with it? I mean, how old was she when she had her first experience?
Okay, well, let's go to about 2.5 years old. 2.5 years old. Lindsey was born into a family in Shreveport of restaurateurs. Okay, very, very widely regarded, the Fertitta family. And at that time, her father had purchased a railroad station, a former railroad station in downtown Shreveport, Louisiana. Her father, Joe, he loved trains. And when he was growing up, he spent a lot of time there. He's just a real train guy. And he had a chance to purchase it, get it on historical record. And he converted the downstairs part of the depot into a restaurant. At the time, it was a very popular restaurant. And the family lived upstairs. Okay. So when the restaurant is active and mom and dad are downstairs working the restaurant, Lindsey would be upstairs in her room by herself. And there was just one day where she was looking out the window and it was a bright, sunshiny day, and she was just kind of bored, just playing in a room, and she wanted to go outside. And a few moments later, some people walking into the restaurant noticed up on the second floor balcony, very large balcony, was this little toddler crawling around on the balcony.
Wow.
So they went inside and alerted
unnerving
parents about it. Of course, they rush upstairs, and the window is open. And Dan and I have seen this window. It's a huge, down to the floor, double hung, heavy wood window. No way a year and a half old, 2.5-year-old child's going to lift it. But it was open. And her parents are up there, and, well, Lindsey, how did you get outside? Morlock opened the window for me. Huh?
Morlock. Okay.
She described her and a one of her friends, if you will, an invisible friend that she called Morlock. She doesn't know why she called him that.
Right.
But he opened the window so she could go outside. And that was a bit of a conundrum for her parents because nobody else is upstairs who would have done that, could have done that. And the window is open. And when Lindsey described her friend, or her father asked Lindsey to describe Morlock. And she said, well, he's about your height and he's kind of thin. He's got white hair. And she didn't know the word cigar, but her father smoked cigarettes. But she was trying to describe that he had a big brown thing in his mouth that made smoke. And of course, he knew immediately smoking a cigar, and that kind of clicked a little something because at various times in various locations in the depot, upstairs and down, there would be the aroma of cigar smoke. And what her father at that time surmised, he didn't verbalize it, but when he was in some of our sessions, when we were researching for this book, he said his suspicion was that the spirit who opened the window, and there was no denying something opened the window, he thought it was the spirit of a president of one of the railroads who had an office in that building that he was acquainted with when he was a child. And his description matched exactly what Lindsey described. And he, of course, smoked cigars constantly. And it turned out that Dan and I did a little pendulum dowsing detective work, and we were led to that conclusion that we did identify that the spirit of Pete Couch was his name, was in fact the spirit who was asked to kind of keep an eye on young Lindsey when she's by herself. And he also demonstrated very clearly that when you're on that side, you can manipulate physical objects. Oh, yes.
They can. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. That's the earliest event. That's the earliest event that Lindsey remembers, and it's a memory. Okay, it's not something she's been told or whatnot. No, she remembers that happening. So that's kind of the earliest that I'm aware that she has.
Okay. Wow. So that's interesting to be so young and to actually remember that sort of thing. Now, obviously, it sounds to me, because this friend, stayed on with her for a while, that her parents did not discourage it. I think sometimes children tend to forget because they are made to feel foolish. No such thing as imaginary friends. Stop at that sort of thing. Was it encouraged? Did she feel like she could keep talking about this, like as she started growing up from a year and a half, 3, 5, did her experiences continue with this being?
From what I understand, again, because of the fact that the window is open, somebody opened the window.
So they knew, right? Yes.
Upstairs do that.
Yes.
And Lindsey could not have done it.
No. Right.
There had to be something to cause that to happen.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that they discouraged Lindsey or encouraged. I think it was something we're not going to talk about this.
It was like a non-event. Yeah.
It was interesting later on when we were doing sessions with some of her family, and they more or less, after doing several sessions with me and George and some of the others, the family members began to come around saying, okay, yeah, there really is something to what's going on here, and we don't have to look away anymore. It was an interesting transition to watch.
Right. Well, especially, when you guys start coming into the picture as well, I think at that point there's a degree of validation. Somebody believes that this is a thing. I think that's a really big thing. And people that through the years that I've dealt with as well, nobody wants to be that guy and talk about anything because they feel like they're not going to believe. And I think half of the battle is knowing that somebody believes you.
Yeah, it was interesting. You watch people go from, I really, I don't believe to.
Right.
Now listen, Mr. Spirit, I want to ask you a question.
Right.
And they go from this to actually conversing with the spirit.
Right.
It's real interesting to watch that transformation go.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, okay. So where does she start getting into, like, where does it pick up from that point? She's got this experience with her friends, a spirit individual. They know who this is, so nobody seems to be overly alarmed with it. Where does it go from there? Where does the extraterrestrial start coming in?
Yeah, let me jump in and then let George kind of take it because he's
anywhere you want to take it.
They're almost neighbors, but Lindsey had experiences later on in life. She lived out in the southern part of Shreveport, Louisiana, on a bayou, and they lived in a trailer that was on a hill, so it was elevated. She would look out the window and see people walking by. Now that was interesting because of the height of her window. Someone would have to be walking by on a ladder or either floating by because of the height. But she was definitely seeing people out there. Later, we determined that they were, it was a combination of shadow people and extraterrestrials and spirits, Caddo Indian spirits.
Right.
So that was an early experience. And then George is familiar with some of the more typical UFO type stuff.
Well, she's in the right area for it. That's for sure. It's got a mix of everything down there.
Well, part of what we were discovering in the research of this book, there are two specific reasons why there's a lot of activity in the Shreveport-Bossier City area.
Right.
But in the Netflix episode, much of it's depicting her early childhood where she had excruciating abdominal pains. Once like 9-10 years old. And it reached a point to where she was hospitalized and every test in the world was done to see if they could come up with any kind of diagnosis. And they found they couldn't. The best they could come up with is her mother at the time was dying of cancer. And they just said, well, she's doing this to get attention. And of course that was ludicrous. So it kind of reached a point where there was nobody that she could really talk to who would understand. Now, other family members were aware of her chronic pains through her childhood, but it wasn't associated with anything. And it turns out it may very well have been some sort of interaction with the extraterrestrials, at least certainly in her more mature years, clearly was. So that's kind of the situation. It's real. It hurts. There's no explanation for it. Really can't discuss it with her father or her mother. She's feeling very bad because her mother is dying.
Right. Yes.
He
may have.
Let me toss in something real quick. Here that's related to that. We have to jump forward in time to when George and I were involved. But we did a session with Lindsey where we actually contacted the EBEs, ETs, whatever you want to call them, who were responsible for her pain during the experimentation. And we basically, we recorded the session and boiling it down, we said, Lindsey, we can get into the how and why this happens to her later, but Lindsey had agreed to undergo these procedures in a past life. So she said, with me and George present, and the ET present. I've agreed to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. But can we do it without the pain? And so we were doing the pendulum session, and we got a yes on that. And since that time, she's had, and George can attest to this, she's had several visitations, and she tells us that they no longer cause the pain. I find that fascinating.
Yeah,
apparently they do not understand, at least the ones working with her do not understand pain or that they are causing pain. And when asked to stop it, they go, okay.
That easy, huh?
Wow.
Wow.
That's interesting. Yeah, because it shows compassion on their end.
What we were finding in this 2-year investigation was not like you might think. This was a totally different experience from top to bottom. It turned out to be, in its own way, very reassuring for Lindsey that there is a rhyme and reason for what she's been experiencing in this lifetime. As Dan alluded, it's something that goes back, thousands of years, actually. In fact, the beginning of this experience, we were in pendulum conversation, and also our mediums were in awareness with the entity we called ET, said we could call him ET, and this was the extraterrestrial who was, I guess is the best way to say, he was kind of managing Project Lindsey.
Okay, interesting.
And we pursued that, and what we came up with,
of course,
through multiple sessions and multiple questions and verification and whatnot, that about 6,000 years ago, on a different plane, ET asked Lindsey, who was then in spirit, would she participate in a long-term project that would benefit Homo sapiens and also some other species, and it's going to involve her ability to reincarnate in the physical. That was apparently one of the key factors, and Lindsey agreed to do that, to participate in long-term, I won't say experiment because they know where they're going. I'd say project. It would just apparently take
This
time.
is a type of contract, though, that was put in place somewhere.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was that's what led Lindsey to say, okay, I agreed to do this, but can we do it without pain? And so that certainly helped that. But we discovered that in previous lifetimes, Lindsey in that expression was having the same type of visitations.
Wow.
And
so this is a reincarnation thing that just kept going.
Oh, reincarnation.
Yes.
Wow, is that a hot word? Let's go with it. Okay.
When Dan and I were doing pendulum dowsing, trying to track down who was Morlock, okay?
Right.
We were at Shreveport's oldest cemetery, Oakland Cemetery, and we had earlier had a pendulum conversation with a gentleman who indicated he was buried in the cemetery, and we asked, well, would you show us where your grave is, your tombstone? And he said, sure. So we went to the cemetery, and then with the pendulum dowsing, should I go northwest or south? And get a yes, go south. Okay. And then how far? Dan navigated to several,
spots. Yeah.
locations. And finally, we came upon a family plot, a nice, very, very nicely maintained plot of the W.D. Woodworth family. It was W.D., his wife, and his son who were there. And W.D., as we were able to converse with by means of the pendulum dowsing and in other sessions, and W.D., who was in Shreveport in the latter part of the 19th century. I think he passed in the 1920s. Quite a rascal, W.D. was. They got all sorts of newspaper clippings on him. But in that life, he had a son and 2 daughters. And as we came to learn, one of the daughters was Lindsey, and that W.D. is her current father, Joe Fertitta, and W.D.'s other daughter is Lindsey's present sister. So
Wow.
the family unit was
Stay
together.
Yes.
In their most recent incarnation, and they stayed together into the present incarnation.
Wow.
And that that set up a very interesting session when Dan was having the pendulum, and we were having a session specifically with Lindsey,
right,
to allow her to have a conversation with the spirit of Sally Murph Woodworth, which was Lindsey's previous incarnation, but that aspect of her soul is
right,
detached. So we're talking with two aspects of the same person,
right.
One in the flesh and one that's not. And
Right.
it was a remarkable conversation.
I can imagine. So this contract then, when you say it was for the good of mankind or the advancement of mankind, is she still, because I mean, 6,000 years later,
Yes.
God, I like to think we're actually getting ahead in some ways. Some ways we still seem to be spinning our wheels. But is she still part of this contract, or has she fulfilled it? Does she know?
We don't know.
Wow,
I talked
okay.
to her not too long ago, and she hasn't had any recent activity or visitations.
Right.
But we don't know. We
Yeah.
just don't know.
Maybe
It's going
she's
on a long time, and it may continue.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we did get an inkling for kind of what the end purpose is, or what the goal is,
Okay.
and that was what as the best we can tell from our information, is that Homo sapiens are going to have a average lifespan of about 150, maybe up to 200 years.
Wow.
Okay. And there's a big effort going on to totally reawaken the sixth sense that
Yes.
Homo sapiens used to have. Then for whatever
Yes.
reason, it was purged out or
The pineal
phased
gland.
out.
Yeah.
But to establish that easy connection with the other planes. So
Right.
imagine Earth after a century of a population that lives to be 150 years old, and they're in frequent contact with the greater life forces that are going on. Totally new ball game. Totally.
I think so. Sure.
Yeah. Keep in mind also, we're telling Lindsey's story. We don't know, but I imagine there are probably thousands of other Lindseys out there. This is not Lindsey's burden to rescue the Earth. She's one part of a master plan, and there are
Yes.
thousands of people involved in it.
Yes.
That's my opinion.
I agree with you. I think you have contactees and experiencers all over the planet who are trying to raise awareness, have this awakening, as this form of evolution that needs to take place. And I think a lot more people are also coming forward with their stories. So, okay, this is Trish. Amelia, can you get that for our
Trish?
listeners?
Hi, Trish. She's also a host on the network.
And she's also a contactee. Go ahead.
That's right. She said, she asks, is that permitted in the underworld to communicate with oneself in another time? Do you think there might be repercussions in doing so?
I don't understand the term underworld.
Yeah. Can you elaborate, Trish, for them? There we go. I guess that was sort of going to be my question, a little bit different than her question. In coming forward and going public with the story, did she end up with any sort of repercussion at all? Because sometimes, they don't want you to go forward with the information. So in this case, they were probably with it.
The only thing that would come anywhere near that were a couple of instances that you might describe as involving the Men in Black. And that's in the book. And we did some sessions exploring a few strange things that could fall into that category. And it turned out that, yes, Lindsey was being observed specifically. This is after the Netflix series came out.
Of course. There we go.
But it was more of just an observational thing and was not negative or threatening. They were more or less in a protective sense. Is kind of the impression I got from it. Dan, I don't know if you had.
No, that's actually quite interesting.
Let me answer Trish's question here.
Yes, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, her question just popped up on my screen about past life. I'm registered clinical hypnotherapist. So I've done hundreds of past lives. There's really something to that. There really is a past life phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And pendulum dowsing is an excellent way to get in touch with your past life and to find out what your life was like in the past and where you are on your journey into the future. So yeah, definitely. If you want to get information from your past life, it is definitely accessible. The pendulum is just one method of doing that.
Right.
I just want to answer her question real quick.
No, I appreciate that. Perfect. Okay, so let's get back to Men in Black. There's a big controversy with Men in Black. Like, some people believe, that some people believe they're extraterrestrials as well. Other people believe, that they're dimensional beings, or other people believe that they're, government beings. You felt that it was sort of a protective nature with them, that they're just overseeing what she's doing, or curious. So it's different for a lot of different people. So did she feel alarmed by having Men in Black coming around her? Does she have any understanding of it at the time?
Until we did some sessions to identify that, okay, what's going on here? And yes, you did see the car was across your house there, and she had two very curious phone calls at her office that should not have happened. They did.
Wow.
But it was more of a we know about you, okay?
Right.
Know about you,
because that's
We're
not
watching
alarming.
you.
Yeah.
It was. Did she feel like she was being watched, kind of thing, with the way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we did go into a little more depth with it, and did not receive any information that there was anything negative about it or anything to be worried about. That it was more of a protective awareness.
She was protected. 6,000 years. She's definitely protected.
Yeah.
So
how
is her
about
family?
You guys? Did you guys attract any attention, being that you were helping her? Okay, I'm on in. You can't just give me one of those reactions and not say anything, you guys. Come on. There's only amongst a few million of your closest friends listening. All right.
Your head isn't that big, Dan. You can't.
I can't have that easily.
Anything that you can talk about or that you can share with us, because people want to know who get involved with, or they find out their friends are being abducted. Like, my goal is not to instill fear, because I have so much fear with it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, one of the purposes of this book is to let people know, you don't have to be afraid to come out and talk. You don't have to be afraid to come out and tell your story to people. Our experience is strictly with Lindsey. We can't speak about positive or negative aspects that have happened to other people. We can only tell what we have reported about in the Lindsey Higgins case. So that there may be cases where Men in Black are hostile. We just haven't encountered that, so we can't report on it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We had an interesting conversation. George and I had an interesting conversation early on in the book. We were talking that you realize more than half of our sources are either dead or aliens. Yeah, how was that going to look?
That's a curiosity, isn't it?
We decided early on. What my point is, we decided early on. This is the story. We're going to lay it all out and let people make up their own mind. We're not going to hold anything back. If our witness is W.D. Woodworth, who died in 1920, our witness is W.D. Woodworth. And you guys can believe it, you can disbelieve it, you can conduct your own research, but it's all laid out there for you. And you make up your own mind. Right.
See, I would think that when you guys are coming up with all of these answers and delving into this investigation, I mean, if she's being watched, I would rather, if I was, just saying Men in Black sort of thing, I would want to be more curious about you guys and what you're finding out, because she doesn't have a lot of memories, at this point. Like, she's just thinking, I'm coming out with this stuff. You guys are helping her bring forward some of those memories. So did you feel that you guys were being, without putting yourselves in any peril, but do you feel like you guys maybe were being observed a little bit, especially, with the curiosity as to your techniques?
Yeah, no, we're not only being observed, we're being manipulated.
Oh, Jesus. See, there we go.
So they were, what do you mean by you were being manipulated?
I'm going
George is like, I'm not
gonna,
talking. I'm just going to laugh.
I'm going to intro George here on this one. We were definitely being manipulated from the spirit world.
Okay.
Okay.
When
Okay.
George and I started working on this, I thought it was going to be, I come over to Louisiana, stay with George at his place. We do research. We go here, there, and we do the pendulum thing and all that. And
Right.
people started popping up left and right. George started, he met an experiential psychic, Colleen Laborde. She found out what we were doing. She wanted to get involved. He met some business people who were very intelligent business people who were very interested, and they kind of came on board and helped us out with some of the research.
Good.
I was doing a radio interview with a good friend of mine back from the 70s. And after we were talking about one of my pendulum books, and afterwards he said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a pendulum dowser, and my wife is a medium. You think we could tag along with you?" So all of a sudden, in the middle of all this, George and I had this complete team of very experienced people in a very broad area working on this whole project. And it turns out that there's a chapter called the stage manager in the book.
Is that kind of like the ship's captain? Well, not everybody can navigate the boat, but everybody's trying.
Yeah, well, apparently George and I and Lindsey were put together for a purpose, and the team was assembled to help us for that purpose. And George, why don't you take it from there? Because that's more your story.
He's like, I don't want to.
You started it.
Wow,
I'm not manipulated. I'm not manipulated.
Yeah.
there's so many facets to this 2-year investigation into Lindsey, but as part of my routine generally during this time frame, as I'm an early riser, and it's a 1 mile walk from my house down to a fine city park, Mike Woods Park, that's adjacent to the runway at Barksdale Air Force Base. So my routine was to get up, walk around the park. And one particular winter morning, I was down there bright at dawn, and the baseball field in the park was just covered in a heavy frost. It was really sparkly. It was kind of cool looking. So I took out my iPhone, took a picture, and posted that on my Facebook as a scene on this morning stroll, and got a lot of responses real quick. "Oh, George, that's great, but what's with that blue tennis ball?" What? I went and looked at the picture again, and yeah, hovering above the baseball field is a dark blue orb about the size of a tennis ball, and somehow I had missed that. And okay, so I kind of blew it off as a lens flare or some other camera artifact. But I continued my morning schedule for the next several days, and a day or two later, I was approaching the spot where I took the picture, and let me recreate this picture. So I set up the frame the same as I had the first time. I don't see anything, but I take a picture.
Right.
Go on back to the house. Okay, look at the opponent. Whoa, we have an orb here.
Right.
Oh, okay. So every time I take the walk, if I reach that point, I'm going to recreate that photograph. And 7 out of 10 times, we're going to have an orb in various locations, sometimes high, sometimes low, sometimes this color, sometimes that color. And the orb began to be more consistent of a certain type of blue color. Anyway, something's going on here. So I sent all the pictures out to Dan. Said, "Dan, get your pendulum, pal. See if you can make any sense of this, because this has got my attention, but I have no idea why the camera's seeing things that I do not see." And Dan came back with his findings, and it was, the orb is a spirit. It's a spirit known to you, but not in this lifetime. And okay. Well, I'm not really apprised of my previous incarnations. I think it's kind of irrelevant for right now, but I did have a little thought. Well, maybe I should get on the internet and look for 19th century American actresses.
All right.
Okay, so we do that. I do that.
Right.
And sure enough, one particular 19th century actress keeps popping up. So I'm subscribed to newspapers.com. So I got real specific with this actress, Kate Bateman. And turns out she was born in Baltimore of a theatrical family. She was a very powerful actress in 1860s. She married an Englishman, moved to England. She was really big on the London stage. And okay, Kate Bateman. All right, so we got this name. And I just want to set up a session with Colleen, the evidential medium. Mm-hmm. Look, we think it's a spirit that's gone to a lot of trouble to make herself known to us.
Right.
Is there any way we can find out what she has to say or offering? And we had a 2-hour session with Kate. And part of that's included in the book because it was very, very profound. Colleen just gave a beautiful description of Kate. And what Kate was presenting was that she's a part of this. We all know each other, everybody involved in this project. You know, we've known each other for, gosh knows, thousands of years. We worked on so many projects similar to this. And that, well, court case is very much a part of it. And as we came to learn that she's the one who kind of put the bug in Lindsey's ear about it's time to come out. And you need to listen to this podcast.
Right.
And she was, you know, stage managers who runs the show. After play open, stage manager runs it. And from behind the scenes, Kate was bringing all of this together to tell the story.
Oh.
And that was
right. Yeah, like synchronicities, just putting the puzzle pieces in place.
Partners is
right.
a former actress.
Right. I think that's great. I think it's great.
That was a very intriguing element. And
I think the spirit realm intervenes more than people actually thinks. And I think it's because life is so busy that, you know, we really don't take the time to pay attention to signs or synchronicities or things like that. You know, we're just too busy. Sometimes people work 2 jobs, or you work a long day, come home, you have a family to tend to, you know, homework, dinner. Like, we just don't really take the time to notice what's going on. So like you say, you're looking like, well, you know, you can, on any given time, you know what your schedule is, you can just, you know, go about your day very efficiently, but you didn't notice this one little blue orb in your photo that was trying to say, hey, I'm here, and photo after photo after photo, which I think is great.
Yeah, for some reason, we're not sure why, but George and I, each of us, we're getting a lot of UFO activity in our lives. He gets a lot of photographs on his walks, and I do a lot of. Out here in the West, I can go camping where there is nobody around for, you know, 10, 50 miles, no lights around for 10 or 15 miles. And I get to see all kinds of interesting. But since we started, in my life anyway, since we started doing this book, I have seen a lot more interesting lights since we started.
Is it because you think you're paying more attention, or do you think that you've attracted attention?
Or
both?
Probably both, but also when I do go camping by myself, I go for one of the specific reasons is to try to make some kind of contact.
Okay.
And you're familiar with Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer?
Oh yeah, CE5.
Yeah. I'm using his technique, which is I'll meditate on making contact.
Yes.
Then I'll basically send out telepathic messages asking for contact, and then send out basically love and healing to the universe, friendship type messages.
Right.
And so far, I'm 6 out of 6 on camping trips.
There you go.
I'm talking. That could be an airplane, that could be a jet, that might be a meteor. I'm talking about. There's no other thing. That could be nothing else except some kind of response, a dramatic response to my request.
Right.
That's impressive.
So,
yeah.
No, just one. I'll give you one example. I was camping, and I did the whole routine, And I figured, oh, this is up in Utah, and I'm looking out over the Navajo reservation, and the area I'm looking over.
That's no wonder.
There's nothing out over. Yeah, I'm looking down on the reservation.
Yes.
No towns, no roads, no farms, no lights, nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The nearest town is 100 miles away over the ridge line.
Yes.
So I go through the routine, and I'm up, and well, nothing's happening. I guess they just don't want to communicate tonight. So I go down, sleep in my cot, roll over, and that was about 11 o'clock. And 1 o'clock in the morning, boing, wide awake, set up straight. Well, not even tired, not sleepy eyed or anything. And I look up, there's this big golden moon-sized object over the horizon. Now the moon had set. It was a full moon that night, but the moon had set before I went to bed.
Right.
So hovering over the horizon is a golden globe about the size of the moon. So I'm looking at it, okay, all right. It's still there. Get out of my sleeping bag, put on a little warm clothes, walk around to the side of my truck. It's still there, just hanging there. It's a golden globe. And I say, well, I'm going to take a picture. And it's gone. Wow. But I observed it for, a good minute or so.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I'm not at all surprised. I do believe, I haven't gone to the extent of going someplace by myself or meditating, but I have just telepathically put it out. Well, no, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
We just happen to be in an active area. So I just sort of put it out there. And that night there was a huge flash of light that came just blasting through my bedroom window, ricocheted on the ensuite mirror and bounced and went back out. And it's 2 stories up. It's a big, it's a tall house, and it's a very quiet street. But, I waited around waiting for a car to come through to see if I could get reflections, things like that. Yeah. There was nothing like that. And I think that's where the journey changes, I think, is your willingness to say, okay, I think I'm ready, and putting it out there. I think there are many out there who are just waiting for people to do exactly what you're doing, just to say, I want, I'm ready to meet you. I'm ready to see what it is, what messages you have. And George is like, no.
Yeah. George has a really good. George had a great in-town sighting.
Yeah, they're gonna wait for a long time.
You and George are both gonna be off going, no.
Yeah, it's quite all right.
Okay, I think it's great. The CE5 is just taking the whole movement into a different direction.
Sure.
So, George, yay or nay on experiences yourself?
No.
Okay.
well into the research period, George the skeptic started kicking in. It was just too easy. I mean, all these people just coming together. I mean, Kate popping up, the 2 mediums coming in. What we were learning about ET and the relationship with Lindsey was like nothing we had ever anticipated, but that's where the information was going. I was just really going to have to question, are we in fact in communication with extraterrestrials? Are we in fact getting the truth about what's been happening with Lindsey? Right. So that was kind of where I was going. So I get up bright and early, 7 a.m., December 28th, 2020, go into the living room, open up the blinds, look across the street, and hovering above my neighbor's house is about a 20-foot diameter yellow and orange sphere.
Nice.
And looking at that sucker, I can see the street light below it. It's got a light pollution bulb in it, so it has a similar yellow orangish type light. Right. I can see the first rays of the soon-to-rise sun in the distance behind the orb. And I notice the circumference of the sphere is not hard. It's kind of like a painter might feather. It's not a hard line. It's got some activity to it, and it was just the damnedest thing. And I'm just observing the heck out of it.
Right.
soaking it up. So, what does George do next?
Yeah, what does George do next?
Go feed the cats on the back porch.
It didn't phase you at all? Really?
Wow.
walk back by the window in the living room, look out, notice that it's gone, and click. Whoa. Hello.
I just had an experience.
I knew I'd had the experience. What I was being given was a demonstration in the manner of contact and suggestion. Basically, as I later surmised, it's called alien apathy, when somebody has some sort of encounter and they react in a way that they would not expect, or you would not expect. Natural thing for me, we'd step out in the front porch there and look at the thing directly, grab the phone, take a picture of it. Of course, that would be the natural thing. What I do, I fed the cat.
Feed the cat. Acknowledgement is empowerment. If I don't acknowledge it, it'll go away.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a deliberate demonstration. And meditating on the whole thing that night, because it was just sinking in. This.
You wanted to make you a believer. Somebody out there needed you to be a believer.
It was about as big a statement as you can get as, yes, George, this is real. This is true. Write the damn book.
Right.
And the phrase that came across for what had occurred was diplomatic reveal.
Okay, that's interesting.
Those are two very proper words to describe what that experience is all about. So after that, fine, let's go.
Right. So no missing time or anything like that. You guys just had your experience. Do you feel that you may have been taken at all?
Not yet.
Not yet. You're willing?
Not yet. I think one thing, again, about my experience up in Utah, kind of ties in with George's, that this is maybe it's a personal thing, because I observed the one I observed for a long time, and it didn't disappear until I thought, I'm going to take a picture of it. Right. And that's when it winked out. It didn't fly away. It just winked out completely. And my interpretation, strictly my interpretation, but it's that, Dan, this is a showing for you. We're real. We're here. Keep doing what you're doing, but it's just for you. Don't take a picture.
Right.
They were gone.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
That's what I meant when earlier I was mentioning about some of the people we talked to back in the day. They described it as being a very personal experience.
Yes, I believe that as well. I do believe that they're sort of catered to the individual, the bloodline, the whatever it is that has attracted them to you, that has gone through lifetimes or just through, your ancestry. I think that there's something about you that is for you and your lineage, and in this case, past lives. Was it ever determined what race of being that was contacting her?
We didn't really pursue information about them so much. We did ask a general question on several occasions to E.T. And it was, if he was to present himself in a manner which we could visually see him,
right, what
would we see? And basically he described your Nordic, your tall, light-skinned,
like Palladian sort of thing.
Blue eyes. But both of our mediums, there were two occasions where E.T. was present, me, Dan, and David and his wife, Lauren, who's a medium. We were at Mike's Park having a session. And I asked E.T., if you're present, could you reveal yourself in some fashion so that maybe Lauren can pick up a little clearer image of how you are, what you are, who you are.
Right.
And that's your cue, Dan.
Okay, that was interesting. We were sitting in a semicircle, and Lauren and I were sitting side by side. And she's a very talented medium. I'm not. I mean, I can do the pendulum dowsing bit, and that's it. I'm not clairaudient, clairvoyant, anything.
Right.
But we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, Lauren and I were both hit at the same time with a powerful, powerful emotion. Lauren described it later as mother love, but at the moment, it was just like right into my heart. I mean, in fact, we have a lot of transcripts of the sessions in the book, and in that session, you hear me going, or you read me going, oh my God, I'm tearing up. It was that emotion, and it was that fast, just like that. And Lauren said she said it was mother love, and she was accurate. It was a strong, overpowering emotional feeling of love that just went whoop, just like that.
Yeah, it's a big impact.
She associated the color purple with it.
Yeah.
Interesting. The color purple.
So, when you ask for some kind of showing or confirmation that they're there, it may be in a different form than you're thinking. It may not be the UFO coming down. It may be something entirely different, but still, nonetheless, exactly as real.
Right. I'm just going to put up a question and a comment, just so that way we'll be able to move on. There you go, Amelia.
Yeah, Trish says there's a simultaneous outdoor Global CE5 event this Saturday. More info on the Global CE5 group page.
There you go, guys. We're going to have a pandemic. Everybody's going to be out there having
a different kind of pandemic. Yeah,
a different kind. Yes. Okay.
And Tamara, hi, Tamara says Pandora's box is open. Do you feel more people are coming forward?
That's part of what George and I are trying to do with this book. And that's definitely what Lindsey is trying to do.
Right. And
I'm pleasantly surprised at how well received this book is and how people are very interested in this whole subject matter. I think there's a lot of latent curiosity out there that's starting to percolate.
Maybe there's just more people having experiences, and much like Lindsey, they just don't. People don't come forward for many reasons. Maybe they're professionals. Maybe it has something to do with their job or their career, family, religious beliefs. There's so many reasons as to why they don't. But it's one of those experiences that will transform you. I think you just need the right forum or the right platform to do it. And for Lindsey, it was Haunted. I consulted a little bit with that show, and they were looking at doing a second season, and they're very thorough.
I like that show.
Yeah, they're very thorough in how they put everything together. And again, there's only so much you can put in an hour, because many of these stories can be a mini series just on their own. If you think of the years and all of the efforts that you guys have put in, that just speaks volumes and attributes the fact that, yes, you could probably get hours of a production, and you can only get a little bit. All the good stuff is usually on the cutting room floor, which is the behind the scenes stuff, right? So now Lindsey today, she's not having as many experiences. How does she feel about all of this? Like, is she able to live her life a little happier because now it's like behind her? Or does she anticipate that there'll be more people like her maybe looking to reach out?
Lindsey's living a perfectly normal life. Okay.
Yes.
She and her husband are just as happy as they can be. She does have periodic health issues, but they're not related to ETs or anything like that. When I asked her recently if there's been any visitations, and she said, no, none of late. There were some last year where they would leave some marks, some symbols. That kind of goes along with it, but there was no associated discomfort. But otherwise, I mean, she works full time, and she's very busy with her family, and just rocking and rolling.
It's my opinion that once she literally started telling her story publicly, and then the book came out, I think her life is probably a lot more normal, because she doesn't have that weight on her shoulders. She's not holding all that stuff in, so she's capable of living a lot more normal life because she has come out.
Right.
It's almost like she's had some sort of healing through it, and I'm happy for her. That's good to hear. That's a lot to hold in from people that you love and know, and not be able to express yourself, and perhaps maybe sometimes you may react to something differently than you would have if it had been out there. It must have been really hard for her, very difficult. I feel for her. I'm happy that she got her story out, and she definitely did it the right way. So,
does she have other family members who have these experiences as well? Children, nieces, nephews, anything like that? It's like George just laughs. I'm like, okay, what?
It's a family affair.
Yeah.
It has to be if they're all together all these years, though. It makes
so
total
everybody
sense.
got the contract, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. So it was a contract with her lineage, essentially past lives, that sort of thing, because the family seems to be staying together, and they still seem to be again, it must be like everybody's involved, but yet she's the one that seems to be or have gone, having gone through all of this. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm sort of tongue tied with it, because usually you can come up and say, okay, they don't usually stop unless you've either fulfilled that contract, or unless you basically just don't have anything left to offer. Then they just tend to move on to maybe children or grandchildren or things like that, staying within the family lines.
What's puzzling me right now is something George and I are facing. Is the basic question. Well, what's next?
Right.
We were directed, and we were supposed to tell the Lindsey story. So I don't think it's gonna stop there. So our question is now, what's the next step? We want to take the next step. We're just waiting for a little nudge.
Right. Maybe you're the next step. Maybe it's your experiences.
Could be.
Like they say, if you live in a haunted house and you're around spirits all the time, or you're in the field, then you become more aware of spirits. You're more open to them. Maybe it's the same thing with ET, because you guys have delved into this. Maybe, and you're actively doing CE5s, and George is like, yeah, I'm good either way, but he's having your experiences as well. But maybe maybe the next leg of the journey is bringing you guys into for something bigger.
We'll see. I'm not very good with patience, but I'm having to learn patience, and we're just plugging away.
Let me know when you get there and how you did it.
We can use some pointers.
We'll keep you posted. But in the meantime, Georgia, we're not stopping. We are continuing our research. In fact, we're getting together in a couple of weeks to conduct another round of sessions. See what maybe a specific direction will come out of that. If not, we'll still have a lot more information than we have right now. So we're still plugging away.
I feel like the two of you should be asking why us now, and understanding that, and see where that takes you. Why were you both chosen for this?
Coming from a really good gifted medium, just saying.
Thank you. But I kept on my own pendulum. But
any clues you might have will be appreciated.
In front of millions of people.
Yeah. I can tell you that did come to me. I can tell you that it honestly, truly did come to me, that the question is, why are you here? What is it that you're supposed to know? The entrance was Lindsey, but the reality is, what does it have to do with the two of you? That's what you're here to learn.
Maybe you're supposed to help more other people as well.
Maybe it's not. Kate summed that up, that we all know each other. This is what we do, and we've been doing it for a long, long time. And that resonated. Right.
Okay. Well, see, maybe that's what it is. People who have experiences out there. Maybe these are your guys right here. George is like, no. I'll finish one thing at a time.
I'll stick to the dud.
It's more sponsor ID time, and sponsor network ID.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to all these.
This is the job.
Pardon?
The job is doing this, the sponsor and station ID. The fun part is interacting.
Yes, otherwise we won't have a job. Okay, you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live on 105.3 FM radio from the gorgeous city of New Orleans. Tonight, we have two guests for you. We have Dan Baldwin and George Sewell, and we are discussing their book, The ET Contact Story of Lindsey Higgins. We're talking all about ETs, CE5s. If you missed it, just give us a minute. If you're just tuning in now, give us a few minutes and you will be able to find us in archives, and we'll tell you more about that in a second. Shout out and thank you to the amazing people at Folgers Coffee for fully sponsoring our show from day one. Thank you for your support and your continuing sponsorship. And a big, huge thank you for our intro and outro to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon. Justin Snicker is an award-winning composer and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp, and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. He is dropping clips of his music every day, and you will find out just by going to look for him on these platforms. You'll be I'm losing myself today. It's like it's Wednesday, it's not Friday. My tongue's going.
I'm working at it.
But click on Amazon or Bandcamp and you can learn how to purchase music from Justin Snicker for yourself. Stream or listen to our archives, including this one, on the platform that you normally use. You can find us everywhere by searching the United Public Radio Network, and then you'll be able to search The Outer Realm, and you'll find us right there on all platforms. No lies. There's over 200 of them. It's insanity.
Oh, exactly.
Ooh.
But a correction, the book is called Paranormal Pendulum 3.
Sorry.
Yes. Well, sometimes I'll put the book up, but I'm just trying to put all kinds of stuff. Got 2 websites.
I took the whole thing from that.
Yeah,
yes.
I know. I figured.
We're
so
discussing her story.
Just wanted to correct that. Yes, it does. So this technique basically, was instrumental in helping her, I guess, get her answers. And here she is. So maybe continuing on, you guys are supposed to keep researching this. And maybe you guys are going to become the test subjects, or maybe you guys will have other people come to you to assist them.
Well, we'll see. I would like to have a face-to-face meeting, as long as I'm sitting up at the table and not laying down on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am of the same mind.
Yeah.
I've often said, I don't understand all the secrecy. There are people who have, like, right in the middle of the day, full on extraterrestrial contact, they just right there in the yard, or just, and then there's others who are just like, everything is so secretive. They're coming around at night and just like, don't you go. And some experiences are a little more enlightening than others. But, that's something right there. Like, when she was having her experiences, were they all, just like getting sucked out a window, through a wall? Because that actually is a thing that happens.
There were some definite physical events that you just described, but there were also a whole lot of other visitations that were more on an astral level and non-physical.
Okay.
So there's lots of ways that these contacts are made, but in Lindsey's case, some very definitely were physical.
Wow. I've spoken to people who said that they felt like they were being pulled through a wall. And I thought to myself,
in Lindsey's case, in the Netflix episode, season 1, episode 5, they have a wonderful recreation of when she was a college sophomore. And as the beam of light burst into the room, it locked onto her, raised her up, and began pulling her out of the room. Now, there was a ceiling fan, and she reached and grabbed the fan to hold on to. And then, as she says, it just jerked her. And that's when she went through the wall. And when she was returned, she got a ladder and climbed up and looked at the fan blades, and they had these finger streaks through the dust. So that just kind of reaffirmed that this really happened.
She was pulled out.
She was dreaming. Did she feel any pain with that? Like, besides the emotion of fear, did she feel any physical pain?
Well, aside from the abdomen story, like, are you saying while she was being
pulled,
taken?
When she was being pulled, when she was being pulled, and she had that incident, that you were saying that was on Netflix.
I'm sorry.
You're being pulled through a wall. You're holding on to a fan. It means you can physically feel. So wouldn't you feel the pain?
Prior to leaving the room, she was watching the wall dissolve, and she could see the craft behind.
I've never heard that before.
Wow, really?
I have to watch this episode. I've never heard that before. Wow.
Well, apparently, it's not that rare, according to the mutual friend that she talked to, who's acquainted with me. the friend informed Lindsey when Lindsey was describing that event, oh, let me tell you how that ends. And she finished what Lindsey was describing and informed Lindsey that this is a lot more common than people know.
Yeah, because people never tell you the wall dissolves. They leave that out. That's huge. That's huge. I'm thinking people are being like pulled through this physical
solid. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm thinking, what does that do?
I heard stories where people feel they're being bounced along the top of the ceiling and they're knocking the wall because they're being pulled.
Yeah.
See, that's interesting to me.
That is very interesting. I learned something. I didn't know that.
Well, see, this is Lindsey's story, and everything else you've heard from other people, I'm sure, is 100% true. But this is the way it happened to her.
And, no, it's amazing. I thank you for that, because no one ever tells us that something is dissolved. They're just discussing about how they get ripped through. They leave out that point that, hey, it's not physical anymore. This is energy now, and I'm being pulled through. I'm not being shredded. Because I always wondered, how do you get through that without any physical pain? How do you not have scars? But thank you so much for telling us, because this is huge to me.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
This is really big for me. Thank you. I've always tried to understand that. I'm like, how is that possible that you don't remember that?
Well, see, one of the things that's hitting George and me is the fact, we're not getting answers. We're getting more questions.
Yeah, always.
Every question leads us to 10. Every answer leads us to 10 more questions.
That's what makes you a researcher, though.
Yeah,
that's what makes you.
That's what
makes you both good researchers. Yeah.
Again, we could have stopped with Lindsey's abduction experience. That's a full story right there. But, through luck, perseverance, or whatever, we kept going and kept studying and kept interviewing, and we got this entirely in-depth, past generations, thousands of years ago, multiple generations story, just because we kept pursuing it. We didn't stop at the obvious stopping point.
Right. And a lot of this has come from the extraterrestrial that you believed was sort of like the case manager, the guy in charge. Okay. That's fascinating. So, and they basically just tell you, like he said, I am this extraterrestrial being, and I'm not just a spirit individual. I think this is where you have to be a master at your craft, as I say, with pendulums, because other people really wouldn't have any idea who they were talking to.
Well, we had benefit of the mediums. We had benefit of the mediums, and the evidential medium, Colleen Laborde, in a session, asked E.T., can you present yourself to Colleen?
Right.
And what Colleen came up with was very similar to what Lauren was describing, except Colleen was a little more focused on the individual, and she was describing a highly, highly evolved spirit that did not have to have a form, but could take on a form for whatever purpose.
Right.
So we're calling him ET because that's the context that it was presented to Lindsey.
Of course.
I don't think everybody's a spirit, regardless of whatever the outer form is. So in that sense, I don't think there really are aliens per se, if you want to look at it from a spirit standpoint. But that's what Colleen perceived with ET himself.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, I personally hate the word alien, but
I think realistically, many of these, let's say, dimensional, interdimensional beings, are already here. I mean, a lot of our indigenous people believe it. They go into the mountains, they're in the oceans, they're underground, they're maybe, we look to the stars, and I'm sure there are many that come from outside the solar system, but how many are actually just leaving the planet and going out and then just returning?
But we had an interesting Native American story that involved Lindsey's property. I told you, the beings she saw outside the trailer, at least there were some of them were Native American spirits. Well, it turns out, and I know this from having lived there.
Right.
Back in the 1811, the Caddo Indians, which was a high culture back in Northwest Louisiana, the chief or the shaman receives some kind of message, from above that, you need to leave Northwest Louisiana and you need to move south where Shreveport is right now. You need to go down there about 30 miles because there's going to be something very bad happening and all the water is going to go bad. And you need to be where there's good, clean water. Well, the bad thing was the New Madrid earthquake, which was one of the most severe earthquakes that ever hit the United States. It hit in the southeast, and it actually rolled the waters of the Mississippi backwards. It was that powerful.
Yeah,
and it was felt, as far over as Texas even.
Right.
But anyway, all the water in Northwest Louisiana was bad in that part of the country. So the Indians who had listened to whoever from above gave them the warning were down in the Shreveport area where the springs were fresh and they had good clean water, and they were able to survive the tragedy. And one of those springs is on Lindsey's property, the family property. And
wow.
And we were there one time with our mediums, and George and I wanted to do a couple of readings, and our medium said, there's some Indians here. Oh, really? She said, yeah, there's 6 Indians here. So we did a session, and we actually interviewed the Native American spirits, and they were there because they weren't haunting the place, but they respected the land and they were kind of keeping an eye on it, basically.
Yeah, guarding it.
And so we had Lindsey's dad there. Joe was with us. He owns the property. And we actually had a conversation with the Native American spirits. Said, look, this is the owner of the property. He's going to take care of it. He respects it. Nothing bad's going to happen here. And Joe's going, yes, of course.
Yes.
And we talked to the spirits and said, you guys can cross over. You don't have to stay here. And so 3 of them actually crossed over. They left this plane. 3 of them decided to stay back. And as we were driving away, we had to walk a little way towards the bayou to get back from the bayou to get back to our cars. But our medium, Lauren, turned around and said, hey, look, the Indians are waving bye-bye. There were 3 Indians. She could see the spirits waving
goodbye. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fascinating. I think many of them return. I always say when you have one that doesn't want to leave, it's like you can come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can come back. You don't have to stay right now. You can go and return, but come back fully ascended and just in visitation and, and on just no earthly hangups, as I like to call it. But they do tend to guard the land. And though that's the land that's usually, super active with just everything. And I think it's just because indigenous people from around the world, throughout many ancient cultures, and it stays within their oral history, they didn't fear any of these things. They didn't fear those who came from the skies or, their friends from underground kind of thing. There was no fear. I think it was only since Bloody Roswell where we started having this fear instilled into us and things just said, oh no, it's just, a weather balloon. And somewhere along the line, I think the information just stopped coming. But when you look at structures all over the world, just go to South America for one, like they're fully loaded with amazing extraterrestrial carvings. You can go to some of the tombs in Egypt and see spaceships in the hieroglyphs. I don't know. We're not the first kick at the can here. We're not. But for some reason, in the last probably 75 years at least, we seem to be the one generation that has a fear.
I think it's because a long time ago when newspapers started and the gentlemen on their soapboxes in town square, that this was what made people want more, and it made money. So they instilled more and more fear. And then eventually the government got involved, and they changed things around, because I don't believe that the information stopped. I just believe that we're not the ones getting it.
Well, for sure. For sure. But this is just sometimes.
There's a term in journalism called if it bleeds, it leads.
Exactly.
You promote the bad news.
Exactly.
You brought up something interesting, though. We have out where I live in Arizona, we have a lot of pictographs. Native American drawings on rock.
Yes.
And it's interesting when you see people, they'll be like drawings of deer and antelope and turtles and fish and snakes. and then you'll have drawings that look like aliens.
That's right.
People,
they draw what they saw.
But you tell people that, they go, well, over here with the animals, that's what they saw. These alien-looking things, well, those were dreams.
Yeah,
and I go, they're drawing what they saw.
That's right. I agree with you.
They didn't break the line down the middle of the rock. This is real. This is fantasy. They drew what they saw.
That's right. And I think when you talk to the Native American people and other indigenous cultures, that's exactly what they tell you. They'll tell you their oral history, and they embrace that. They embrace it. Things that we all fear. Well, I mean, some things that they fear, like giants and things like that once existed, and people are finding things. And yet you talk to some of the indigenous with oral history. Oh yeah. They were there. Well, yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, you talk to the Native Americans out here, and it's a part of their culture. Of course,
yes.
Of course they dance down from the sky, and
yes,
that's part of our culture. That's not only our culture; it's part of our history.
Yes, I agree. Which brings us back to spirit communication, which I think will be a whole other show where we can really delve into your book and your techniques and maybe other stories and things of that nature. So I think maybe we can do another segment if you guys are interested. And
we bring out this little thing here.
There we go.
I've never used one. I find them fascinating.
I've got all kinds of them. I love it.
Michelle bought me one. Yes.
Yeah, the reason I love it, there's no room for interpretation. It's either yes or no.
It's true. And like the one I got you, Amelia, was made from like 400-year-old hemlock from this.
Yes, from that house. Yes,
I know.
It's in my cabinet. Yes.
Oh yeah, really old.
I just promised I wouldn't use it unless we're together because I can go a little crazy with the other side.
But the one question I do have though about pendulums is answering yes or no. There are some people that believe that because they work with the energy of the person doing the dowsing, because I've played with that theory a little bit as well, also saying, like, how will you answer yes for me or no for me? And I've just experimented because I'm a researcher, I've been in the field for about 20 years, not 40 or anything, but it's, but I've asked, with myself, and it will go one way, for yes, and it might go across for no. But when I do it with other people and just bring it to them, there are times where it is different. So do you go with your own energy, or is it pretty much general the same all the time?
I go with my. I want to say I don't. Yeah, I have to say I go with my own energy in the sense that I use the pendulum to steady my conscious mind.
Right.
And then my subconscious mind takes over.
Right.
And then whoever the subconscious contacts, whether it's ET, higher self, spirits, whatever.
Yeah.
That's who takes over at that point, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And then the information is downloaded from that source to the subconscious, and the subconscious moves the fingers.
Right.
I try to keep myself totally blank.
You have to be focused. Yeah, focused and yes.
Focus, not open.
If you want to, you can make it go any way you want.
Yes, it's mindset.
Am I going to win the lottery this weekend? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I just have one thing to say. Mad exit from Vegas. Do not play the tables. They'll think you're reading cards, and I have been escorted out. But I just wanted to give you a little backstory on. For me growing up Italian and my mom being from southern Italy, what they used to do is they would take a string and they would take a ring from the other person and put that on the string and use their ring as a pendulum to answer the questions for them, because they felt like they had a part of their energy leading them as well.
That's interesting.
So just whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I remember her doing that.
This is why I say you have to be a master of your craft.
The pendulum is just a rock on a string.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's no magic.
Right.
In it, the quote magic is between.
Well, that makes you the dowsing rod, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Your energy. You become that focal point. I'm going to put this up for Amelia to read. Trish Trish is, again, she's a contactee, and she gets a lot of synchronicities. And some of those synchronicities have sort of blown our mind. We're just like, so this is one that she had just last night. This is
we get crazy messages from this young lady. We love her. Trish writes, I grew up in Mogollon Rim Country. Oh my God. Mogollon Rim Country. Okay, I'm just going to let you say it.
You do better. Who said it better?
Not me. I watched a movie with the quote, "Death is the beginning of life," just last night and talked about a Sewell bridge with other investigators. Perhaps you two are the bridge between worlds.
Revelation. There we go. Thank you for that, Trish. Oh, no. Believe me, we've had shows at times and she spit things out. We're like,
we're just in shock. Like, what?
I know. Also a gifted medium, just so you know. So as we near the end of the show, please tell us what you guys have coming up. What are you working on next? What are you doing? How do we find the books? Just promote.
Take it, George.
Well, you can find the book Paranormal Pendulum Book 3 wherever you buy books. Okay, they can access it. They can also access Dan's previous book that's more specific to the afterlife, Paranormal Pendulum Book 2, chock-a-block information in it.
Okay.
So that's where the books are.
Okay.
And, George, you have books. Tell them you have books.
Well, yeah, I've got some books also that go to my website and take a little reading. And if you want to get one,
they're all in this show. Yeah, anybody who listens to the shows in the archives, literally everything is there. Just so you guys all know that all you've got to do is just look at the information about the segment. Your websites are there, all your books are there, and your bios are there, and people will know how to find you.
Yeah, as well as on Facebook and Instagram.
Everywhere. Yeah, we've got it everywhere. So what's next for you guys? You writing another book?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we are. You mentioned the sky people, so we kept bumping into the sky people, and so George and I have decided to go to the source, and we will talk to the spirits of the people who encountered the sky people, and see what they can tell us about them.
Oh, wonderful!
I love it.
Started. In fact, I just got back from investigating some ruins up in Utah, where I met some spirits and. Headed over to George's place. We're going to go to Poverty Point.
Well, we've already done Poverty Point. There are some sites here in Shreveport area that were inhabited 6,000 years ago. That it would be curious if the people had the same sky people experience. Well, I've done a couple of sessions and conversed with an individual who, oh yes, the sky people were very, very much a part of the community.
Wow.
So take that in much more detail.
So the spirits really will lead you to the information, even about extraterrestrials, past lives, just everything you always want to know. I'm just segueing into another segment. So there is a connection between extraterrestrials and the paranormal and spirits. I've often found that there was a lot of researchers have leaned to that. And it sounds like you guys have proven that, just with your methods.
That's what they tell us. That's what we're getting. George and I aren't making it up. We're reporters, and we're reporting everything that we get, and then we just lay it out there.
Right. I love it.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was just such a pleasure to have you both on. I will email you once we can get off the soundboard, and we'll go over some of those dates that I sent you guys, and let me know what you think, and we'll get you guys settled.
I can't wait.
Another show.
Love it.
Thank you so much. I learned so much tonight. Thank you both.
Yeah, especially the whole what? I don't have to go through the wall hole. Yay.
I'm just curious as to why people fail to mention that. That's all. It's just, they say I get pulled through a wall. I get pulled through the roof. It's like no one's ever told us. It dissipates.
There we go.
I'm a lot calmer and happier for it. Thank you.
We've done our job.
Oh my gosh, you guys have done so much. You don't know. You've reached so many people. You're helping so many with those books.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and we're looking forward to the next segment. Yes. So thank you very much for joining us. All right, guys. Thank you and good night.
Good night. I'll wear my hat next time.
Well, that was a fantastic segment here in the Outer Realm. We're already done and over with, if you can believe it, sadly. These guys are great. They're just so delightful to have on. And they're books. Check them out. They've got a lot of really good books. You will find them. All you have to do is wherever you're watching the show, I'm pretty sure it all was posted for the live show. So just follow the trail and go check them out. So big thank you to Dan Baldwin and George Sewell for being here tonight. Huge thank you to Folgers Coffee, who have been sponsoring us since the beginning. Big thank you to Dr. Justin Snicker, for your contribution of your voice and your amazing music. Thank you. Thank you. Remember, no matter where you're going, wherever you're watching this, subscribe, like, follow, join, whatever the case may be. If you like it, please show us your support, and we appreciate you for it. If you want to contact us, 2 ways only, guys. outerrealmcontact@gmail.com. That's the email, the outerrealmcontact@gmail.com. If you are on our Facebook page, and if you're not, you should be, just go click on the email link, and that'll take you right to the email. So please just feel free. Tomorrow night, back by popular demand, woohoo, is of course another Q&A roundtable discussion. Get your questions in order. Get into the chat room. You know those. I know, right? Those are fun. Bubbles is ready to go.
Yeah, always.
But yeah, put it together. We have a couple of topics, just based on emails that we've got, stuff like that. So we'll kind of touch on that a little bit. But it'll definitely be paranormal based as always, and we're always interested in anything that you guys just want to fire at us. So get ready, and in the meantime, have a great evening. Behave yourselves tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow night. All of you. Y'all better be back. Good night.